the topic of the call tonight will be an experiential exercise that's inspired by the near-death experience life review. And so I'll give a little kind of warm-up, and then we'll go into an experiential exercise that'll last, up to half an hour or so. So if you like, you can grab some paper and a pen and take some notes when we get to that stage, and then we can have a little time for sharing at the end. So I come to this topic, my spiritual worldview, I think we're all rose light people on the call, and so, I know my spiritual worldview is very much informed by the kind of soul planes material and the work of Dr. Michael Newton, Life Between Lives, and the kind of reports of near-death experiences. And part of my sort of ministry, so to speak, I feel like going forward is to facilitate living from the perspective of a soul well in this life. And so I've been reading about the life review process, and I've been especially inspired by Daniel Brinkley. And so Brinkley was one of the first real people to kind of popularize the concept of near-death experiences. You're maybe familiar with him. He's published quite a few books and kind of been on the speaking circuit and so on, but I'll give a little bit of a background in case you're not familiar with his work. And he's published a more recent book, which is kind of an overview of his life's work called At Peace in the Light. And so I highly recommend it. It really kind of his spiritual light really shines through. And he talks about the importance of doing a kind of a self-life review process while we're still alive, as a way to kind of acclimate, to the final process, and to kind of give us a chance to get on course while we're still in our present lifetime. So a little bit of background. Brinkley is kind of a spectacular story of spiritual awakening. He was kind of a good old boy Marine from Georgia, I believe, kind of a rabble-rousing guy. He says, of himself that he sort of liked to fight and, get in barroom fights and was kind of a bully and so on. And so he was living the good life. And then one day while he was on the phone, he was struck by lightning, or lightning came through the phone line and it electrocuted him. And as he says, he recounts this in his first books, he was literally thrown across the room by the force of this, so much so that his shoes were left welded to the floor while he was thrown across the room. So very dramatic. And he was pronounced dead, taken to the hospital, and then went through kind of a classic near-death experience, being escorted by beings of light to a crystal city. And he talks about this in great detail, the kind of beauty of the soul planes, and he undergoes a life review. And after months of convalescence in the hospital, he was gradually able to regain his health and his ability to speak and so on, and as well as a lot of psychic ability. And long story short, he actually went through 2 additional near-death experiences during his life, and came to really reform his character. And he has a very, very spiritual perspective now, and helps to work in hospice. He's devoted his life to helping, especially veterans, cross over. And because he has this ability to kind of empathically follow somebody in their experience, he's the perfect psychopomp who can help people over the veil and experience what they're experiencing. So it's quite a remarkable story. And, his account really touches me somehow. So I'll just read a couple of short snippets from the book that kind of capture some of the essence of it. So at one point he says it was largely through helping AIDS victims that he says I discovered the value of the life review. So helping these people who had a lot of unresolved feelings and fear of death and so on, and by helping them to kind of recapitulate their lives before their actual death, it really helped them to make peace with that process. And so he says in another passage, he says, I've been through this twice myself, and if I've learned anything, it is that we deliver our own judgment through our life review. We are our harshest critics, without a doubt. One of the greatest gifts of the life review is that it is a pure experience of empathy. Of everyone I have met who has had a near-death experience, the judgment they have cast on themselves as a result of the life review is as tough as any that could be handed out by someone else. Okay, so, speaking to the point that there's no external God or judge that kind of renders judgment on us, it's really our higher consciousness that judges or assesses ourselves. Okay, so that's really essential to the view here. And then another quote, he says, the near-death experience made me realize that I am part of the woven tapestry of life. When a corner of the cloth is given a tug, the whole thing moves. The power of such a life review is that it lets you know what your place is in the universe. It helps you see who you truly are. You are alone, yet more a part of humanity than ever before. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, nothing can bring you peace but yourself. All right, and so that kind of spiritual perspective of being interwoven with the other people in our lives is very much part of the soul's perspective. All right, so in terms of the kind of stages or the structure of the life review, there are a couple of key points. And so as we might be familiar with, one, meets one's guides, the beings of light typically kind of come to escort one over the veil. But Brinkley talks very specifically about two stages of the life review. So once one has kind of crossed over into the soul planes, there are two stages. And the first stage, according to Brinkley, is that you see your life from the perspective of your best friend or your guide. So you see your life as a panorama, is the term that he uses, through the eyes of this compassionate observer, your guide. And then that is one stage of assessment. Okay, and this, reminds us of the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, which I think was a very inspired, one of my favorite films. So that's the first stage. And then in a second stage, and this is really key, you see every action that you've done throughout your lifetime, but you see it from the viewpoint of the other person involved. And so that's really key. You get kind of the other side of the tapestry, so to speak. You get to see the reverse side, their point of view instead of yours. And Brinkley says what's important is not so much the actual action, but the motivation with which you perform the action. And so that's very reminiscent of the kind of Buddhist view of, in the view of karma, where it's really the motivation behind the action that's the key thing. So this is the kind of woven panorama of the life review. So oneself is the judge of this experience, and as we know from the literature, near-death experiencers regularly report a real change of character for the positive, usually becoming much more kind of loving and grateful and happy to be alive. Okay, so this is a very powerful experience, clearly, and again, it can be really beneficial to do we're still in the middle of our lives. So Brinkley says that he recommends doing a periodic self-life review. And so this can help us to address karmic challenge points before the actual time of death, the kind of a dress rehearsal. We still have time to make changes before the big show, so to speak. This can help to ease the fear of death, and it helps us to have a positive evaluation when the time comes to kind of, stack up some positive motivations in our actions. Okay, so that's a little bit of a background. And so we can move into a kind of an experiential exercise then. And so we'll spend about half an hour. And so if you like, you can have a piece of paper handy to take some notes, and then we'll have a chance to share at the end. So we'll kind of recapitulate both these stages, the first and the second. Okay, so the first stage, you can begin to get comfortable in your chairs, going into a deeper meditative state. And you can take some deep breaths in and out. And when you're ready, call for your spirit guide. Invite your guide in. This is the guardian angel or spirit guide who will escort you when you cross over. There might be more than one. So take a moment to connect with your guide and request that they accompany you in this process. And so, as you're ready, you both travel to the soul planes. And when you arrive there, you reach an auditorium in the cities of light. And you can take a moment to picture this, visualize this. This is the venue for the life review after crossing over. And you're there with your guide. And a screen appears in the front of the auditorium. Your life will be projected on this screen. And you will see your life from the perspective of your spirit guide. And so in a moment, I'll call out each of the periods of the lifespan, childhood and adolescence and so forth, and give you about 2 minutes of clock time for each period so that you can review your life through the eyes of your guide. And so remember that the guide is really interested in the motivation for your actions, whether you acted with kindness, etc. And so picturing this screen, taking the viewpoint of your guide, let the film of your childhood, the record, the Akashic record of your childhood play out. And we'll take about 2 minutes. Just reviewing the major episodes. And what does this appear like from the eyes of your guide? And taking another minute with the childhood. Seeing the major episodes, major events. And beginning to complete this childhood phase, moving on to adolescence, teenage years. Letting the major events be shown, seeing these through the eyes of your guide, and letting those motivations, seeing this through the sense of empathy. And beginning to complete the adolescence period and moving into early adulthood, the ages, the 20s and 30s, young adulthood, and seeing this through the eyes of your guide. Let the major episodes be appreciated. What were the motivations? And taking another moment with this early adulthood phase. And beginning to transition to mid-life, the 30s, the 40s, up to age 50, the 30s and the 40s. I'm seeing this stage of life, the major episodes, through the eyes of your guide. What were the motivations? And taking another minute with this midlife period. And as you're ready, you can begin to transition to life from age 50 to the present, seeing the major episodes through the eyes of your guide. And let these episodes appear on the screen. And beginning to reach completion, take another moment to complete the span of your life as it's showing on the screen. And thanking your guide. You can consult your guide for the overall assessment, and you might want to take some notes here. So what successes did you have overall? What challenges did you have overall? Do you notice any common themes or patterns? What advice or feedback would your spirit guide give to you? And what should you work on in the rest of this incarnation when you return? And take a few moments to jot down some notes. And so, moving on to the second stage of the life review. And here you'll want to use your paper. And so the second stage is seeing your life through the eyes of the people you have impacted. And so make a list of the major 5 people in your life for this exercise. Perhaps ones with whom there's unresolved karma. Let them kind of pop into your mind. Often the parents are very important, or relatives, family members, close friends, and so on. And make a note of the 5 key people that come forward right now. And so, one by one, we'll look at our lives through their points of view, and we'll go through as many as we can in the time that we have. And you can continue this on your own later. And so once again, breathe deeply, reconnecting with your spirit guide. Now ask for one of the 5 people on your list to step forward in spirit. Let them self-select in this way. And take a moment to enter into the eyes of this person. You could imagine kind of taking their body on, seeing your life through their eyes. Recall the major episodes you've had with this person, major interactions. How do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? And what feedback would they give you about your conduct? And we'll take about 2 minutes of clock time for the first person. And taking another minute of clock time with the first person, letting the major episodes of interaction with them be experienced through their eyes. And summing up your interactions with this first person, how do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? And what feedback would they give you about your conduct? And take a moment to write any notes for yourself. And now we can repeat this process with another of the 5 people on your list. And so ask a second person to step forward. Recall the major episodes and interactions you've had with this person. And relive these episodes from the eyes of the other. How do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? And what feedback would they give you about your conduct? And we'll take about 2 minutes of clock time. And taking another minute with the second person, experiencing the major interactions with them through their eyes. And beginning to complete with this second person. How do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? What feedback would they give you about your conduct? And take any notes that you would like. And we'll repeat this process with one more of the 5 people on the list. And so let another one of the 5 people step forward. And recall the major episodes you've had with this person. Reliving these episodes from the eyes of the other. How do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? What feedback would they give you about your conduct? And we'll take about 2 minutes to explore this. And taking another minute with this third person, seeing the major episodes of your interaction through their eyes. And beginning to complete. How do they view you? How did your actions feel to them? What feedback would they give you about your conduct? And take a moment to write any notes. And so beginning to bring this journey to the soul planes to a close for right now. Begin to let your guides escort you back to this plane, this life, 3D, earth plane life, present incarnation. And in your own way, give thanks to your guides You may want to ask them to continue to work with you and giving thanks to your guides. You can complete this process. And in your own time, beginning to come back into ordinary consciousness, wiggling your feet, your fingers. You might want to stretch. And take your time. And we'll have a few minutes for sharing, about 12 or 13 minutes for sharing if you would like to share any of your insights from the process. And so feel free to unmute yourself when you're ready and we can share.
Laura, this is Lori. What was the second question with the first exercise?
Let's see.
What successes and then the second question?
Right. What challenges did you have?
Oh, okay. It was challenges, yeah. I didn't really have a chance to fill out I had a real sense of the going through the experience. I just didn't get a chance really to write it out. But in the first phase, I saw that Jeff, like very, I'd say very generous, always pretty generous and very emphatic. Empathy. With empathy and charitable and spiritual. And there was just there was a deep valley when that wasn't there, when it was kind of like sort of in a survival piece. But mostly, like 90% of it was pretty, of the light. And I guess following my own light too. Like sense of following my own light. I didn't really get a chance I look forward to filling it out a bit. Like feedback from guides, I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to hear that yet. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh, great. Thank you for the feedback.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny because the seeing it through the first phase was very much like seeing generous and charitable and spiritual. But then in the three people was not almost was more like insecure, self-centered. And feedback would be believe in yourself. So it's kind of like the other side of that.
Interesting. Yeah. So there was a difference in the kind of perspective between the guide and the earth people. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing.
is Diane. Thank you for the journey. I had an interesting experience calling in the spirit guide, and when you said there could be more, there was this one guide that is female and has a really nice, glistening, glittery white cape with quite a collar and on it, around the neck, and I'm familiar with that guide. And there was that she appeared to the right, and then there was this male form that wanted to come, but it was hooded like the Ghosts of Christmas Past in a Christmas Carol, and there was never a face seen, and it was just the hooded and black. And it wasn't scary at all. It's just, it was male, and it's like, well, who is this, and what is this? And as the invitation was there to look at, the strengths and the challenges and stuff, that being first sat on my lap, and I checked in with the other guide, and said, is this okay? It felt okay. And then it sort of became melded into me, and it wanted to be part of me. And I kept saying, is this okay? And it felt okay. And then it was okay. And so it was like really taking on a perspective and trying to see through those eyes, as was the exercise. And so what was most interesting for me is the observation of this being, that my sense is that it's a more complete, trying to be more complete, masculine, feminine, but also maybe shadow a little bit. It didn't feel shadowy, it's just that it was dark. It was a very interesting experience, and I'm not really quite sure what it is, but it felt like it was something around becoming more complete and whole, and seeing another, as was the exercise, seeing another side or another perspective for the rest of time in this life is what I got.
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that's a very powerful image, that kind of hooded figure from the Ghost of Christmas Past, I should say.
And future.
And future, yeah.
And then the other pieces were interesting with the three people, but I had a really hard time trying to envision what they would say and trying to get their perspective. That was challenging. So what was most interesting for me was this piece I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Interesting.
Well, that was really a useful meditation. And let's see what the guides. Oh, going through the stages of life here. For some reason, that's been happening to me lately. Just a lot of thinking back to old episodes and earlier situations, and motivation. That's a very key word. And And I also had the experience of this being more benign than I expected, and a kind of a dispassionate view that others that the guides might take. And people came up that were important, and I've been aware. Okay, how do I describe this briefly? In about 1988-89, I was introduced to Reiki, and also to a group called the Activators. And what they do is they go around to different spots on the earth and energize the grid. And so, I've been aware that was something that happened with me and various trips to various places around the world, and all you really have to do is stand around like an acupuncture needle, and energy goes through and assists with the energizing and I guess the word regularizing isn't quite the word, but that's what comes to mind, of the Earth grid. And so some of that came up in that various travels would come to mind with different people. So that was kind of cool. And then the 5 people that came up actually turned into 6, because all the 5 I first thought of have passed on, but one of them that. Let's see. The first one, there was a heart connection and some travels. And the second one was my grandfather, who was a scholar. And I kind of resist doing scholarly work because I think, well, what is all this for? But he really encouraged it and backed it up and helped out and he was pretty tolerant of the fact that I was, 12 at the time. And then my sister is even more of an activator, but she would not look at it from a New Age perspective at all. She just spends half her time in Europe or someplace. And we've traveled together some, and so that was interesting. And she's very much with us. She'll be back from Spain on October 2nd. So altogether, it was kind of confirming and nice. And as I say, people were kind during the meditation. So thank you very much. It was it's a very useful process.
Oh, great. Thank you for your feedback. Yeah, so it's very interesting. It sounds like other sort of aspects of your mission kind of came through as well, so that's interesting. Great. So as I was putting this together, my idea is to kind of fine-tune it, and one of the things that I found myself questioning, as you were saying, Diane, is that when you take the view of the other people, found myself wondering, is it their ego self that they're seeing you, reacting from you from, or their soul self? So that's kind of an interesting question. That so I don't know if you guys have any feeling about that, but to be developed. Okay, great. Well, so we're almost at the end of our time.
To me, those two things are connected in the person so closely that you're really dealing with both. Because the important people to us have a lot to do with our mission, I guess, would be what comes up for me in answer to that question.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I kind of realized that that question didn't occur to me as I was reading Daniel Brinkley's kind of account of this, and I think his view is kind of consistent with that. That makes sense. That they're in your plan, because it's all part of the same tapestry in a sense. So, yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, we're almost at the end of our time, so I invite and encourage you to work with this process, share it with others. And again, Daniel's book, At Peace in the Light, is very nice, very kind of heartfelt sharing of his kind of gathered wisdom over his lifetime of working with this. So I found it very inspiring. And he gives a lot of kind of practical tips for how to integrate this into daily life and working with other people and so on. Great. So we can start to bring our gathering to a close for tonight. And is there any other comment or sharing that anyone would like to do before we close?
I'm complete. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Great, thank you. And so let's just end with a little weaving from heart to heart in a circle. And so we can imagine a source of light in the center, maybe the soul light, the divine light, and just imagine this line of light connecting us heart to heart, and we can include others in our community who are here in spirit, and others who may listen to the call later as recording. And let's just send some blessings into this grid work. Great, thank you. There's a lot of energy on it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so thank you for joining us for this Spirit Gathering teleconference. This call may be archived as an MP3 at www.tzaddi.org. Phone access to the recording of this call is available until next month's call. For playback of the recording, dial 718-432-1085, access code 990322#. Their next Spirit Gathering will be on Tuesday, October 16th. We are still organizing speakers. And in fact, if you would like to volunteer to lead the Spirit Gathering, you are most welcome to contact me. And if you have any inspiration around that, we would welcome that. These calls are hosted by Tzaddi, an interspiritual metaphysical organization founded in California in 1964. Tzaddi welcomes, nurtures, and supports people in celebrating and more directly experiencing their relationship with the loving presence of the divine. Our programs are open to people of any race, color, or national or ethnic origin. Visit www.tzaddi.org to learn more. We'll close now with thanks and a blessing. Thanks to Tzaddi founders Amy Keyes and Dorothy Blackmere. Thanks to all of you who have been a part of our community tonight. And thanks to the Divine who supports us always, even when we are not aware of it. Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.